Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed. Continuing our focus on that unfortunate incident that happened in Lagos. We've got Mr. David Majekudumi, who is an architect. He's a chairman of Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos chapter. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
A very sad development there, but you know, there usually will be a lot of ifs and buts about this kind of scenario when it happens. And yes, we've seen that it has happened before, but your profession, deeply involved in terms of, in the scheme of things, how the right thing should have been done. We did hear you talk about some of what you think the challenge is, but if you could give us maybe like a wider picture of what should have been in the first place and how what went through your mind when this happened.
Yes, thank you. First and foremost, I want to console with the families of those who have lost their lives in this mayhem or disaster. Now, as it is well practiced globally, you know, I mean, like we are in Nigeria, we use the British system of law. We're practicing the American system of government, which is that's a confusion on its own, you know. Yesterday I talked about the National Building Code. Now, the process of development is that you engage an architect, you know, you give him your brief to design, and then he has to involve other consultants in terms of a structural engineer, mechanical. But before then, at least there are certain things that has to take place. Now, for the structural engineer to determine what the foundation will be like, there must be a soil test to know the strength of the soil. And that determines what type of foundation you use. Now, you put in the application, have a planning permit, and thereafter you have the planning permit, and thereafter you have the building approval. As you can see, I belong to two worlds, and I've practiced both here and abroad. And like I said earlier, I mean, there is a code, a national building code. It's global. Every country has the national building code. And we're in Nigeria today, 36 years after. Can you imagine? We can say this is our own national building code. There's been a lot of work on it. And all we just need is that enabling law to make it effective.
My apologies for butting in. What would the building code do to the process? How will it be able, for instance, to help us help us avoid this kind of scenario?
Right. Thank you. Now, the building code gives a minimal requirement for materials to be used, for the quality of the materials, for the labor, and the standard. We have the NSO, Nigerian Standard Organization of Nigeria. It's such a shame. It's too late to cry when the head is off. I was at the site for almost about 4 hours yesterday. The NSO was just coming in to come and take samples. Samples for what? When the head is off, you're coming to take the samples of what? We have various manufacturers in Nigeria. The cement manufacturers, iron rod. What is happening?
What standards do they
exactly.
hold them to?
You know, and then, I mean, the government still needs to do more. I mean, we have the likes of the NAFDAC. You must see a NAFDAC number. Yeah. I mean, if you go abroad, you buy a certain materials, even ordinary plug, you see the identification number of the standard. That is, this is verified to meet the British standard, BS so number. But in Nigeria, my dear brothers, where are we?
So, but
even ordinary block, the block that you make to build the concrete block or the hollow block, we're supposed to have it embedded in it.
So right now that that building code hasn't seen the light of day, what standards is it that the professionals, what do they abide by?
Now, in most cases, it's only when you engage, maybe what I might put as a 5-star contractor. I mean, the likes of Julius Berger or the likes of Kappa and Dabato and the rest, because they are from, I mean, they follow either the British standards or European standard. As at today, can we say that we have a building regs? What is a building regs? A building regs comes out of the domestication of the National Building Code, because that building regs, or building regulation, as what we just short form of it is the building regs, has to do with a particular area. Now, if you look at construction in Ikoyi, it's different to the construction here, because you have a solid ground here. Now, the wind in Victoria Island comes with salt. So the kinds of material you use has to be specified, and this begins where, you finish the design. In your specification, you have to specify these materials to be used to meet up this standard. But as I said, I do it to meet up with the British standard or to meet up with this European EC, whatever standard.
Now, if you look at that site, you were there. I mean, there was supposed to be that building that collapsed is like one of three.
Yes.
And one wonders, what happens? There is just one of the three that went down. And in the manner that it even went down, it's like a stack of sliced bread, so to speak. It's even chilling to imagine. And there are those who are pointing fingers at the architect.
Yeah, thank you. I won't say you point fingers on the architect, but at the same time, I'm ashamed. I'm talking for myself. I'm ashamed to be, an architect or a professional in the building industry, and this is happening. Now, when you look at that structure, it's like what I would call implosion, where everything just came down. It's like maybe it's ignited or, because I can't say yet or until when the investigation it's done. Is it a structural defect? It's not that it's badly designed. The architect does the design and the structural engineer will determine what kind of structures and things. But hold on. It's a pity where our country is today. I talk about standard. You look at the first two towers that were built, and you look at the one that collapsed. In a nutshell, what's the cost of cement at this time last year? What's the cost of cement today? And are we getting the right quality? Who is checking, or who is monitoring, or who is checking the standard of the cement? And everyone, with the situation on the country, the economic situation, everyone wants to cut corner. Because if you're buying a bag of cement around this time last year for less than 2,000, let's say 1,800, and today the bags of cement is costing, about 4,100 per bag. And are you sure you're still getting the same quality? There's so many adulterated materials out there. And who is checking? So I must say, let's let the government do a forensic, thorough investigation onto this, because the cost of this, you can't determine it.
Yeah.
Because it's when the investigation is done, you know whether the foundation is weak or, all sort of things. There are a lot,
Yesterday, the deputy governor was there, and some of the things he said was that because there was that disparity or confusion as to did they give approval, what did they give approval for, were they sticking to what was approved? And then we heard him say that, they gave approval, that the problem is not with the approval, the problem is with the construction. So as much as one thought, okay, isn't that what the forensic audit is supposed to tell us based on some of those key facts? But if he then says the problem is with the construction, how does that come across to you?
Yes. Number one is to do with who are the consultant, who the contractor is, and if the problem is to do with the construction, definitely on the government side, they're supposed to have known because there's what we call state certification. I mean, I'll say Lagos State is doing well to some extent, but they need to do more. Because in the last 10 years, I think the urban and fiscal planning and urban development control law has been revised and, putting in all what needs to be in terms of, regulations and things like that. But in terms of state certification, those monitoring it should have known that, that, oh, there's a defect in this or something is happening in this, there's this crack, and put a stop, So, I mean, to now say, yes, is the construction? Yes, definitely. I mean, what will have caused the collapse, if not for defect in the structural element of the building?
Is it possible that when the architect does his job, hands over to the structural engineer and several other persons who are supposed to work there, is it possible for them to adjust that? For instance, we hear people say, well, they were trying to adjust the design or just take it a little further than what was designed. Do those kind of things happen?
Yes and no. You see, all the consultants in the built environment are involved from the inception to completion. So there's no stage where the architect has to hands off. We all work together. And, it's just the beginning is like taking a brief. You want your dream to come true, Yes, you come up with the design, but you still have to sit down with the structural engineer to say, will this work? Now, you look at this space. Why do we have this long span and it's standing, And not only that, even during the construction, you all attend site meetings, inspect and find out that, okay, does this work? Does this conform with? And along the line where you see maybe, oh, this might not work or this will work, you have to put heads together and see how it will, I mean, let's look at, there's so many structures all over the world, under the water, above the water, and it's all science.
Well, as my colleague said, we should be going to Abuja shortly to take the second guest. But this panel that the Lagos State government is setting up, involving your side of the construction industry and several other stakeholders in the building and construction industry, how optimistic are you that we will have something great come out of it?
Thank you very much. You said how optimistic I am.
Or otherwise.
Inverted comma. Because not only myself, the Institute has been involved in series of investigation, tribunals, name it. And what's the outcome of it today? Sometimes we hear the white paper will come out and, there's been a lot of investigation. I mean, this is not the first time we're having this kind of incident. 2008 or 2009, where so many children's lives were lost. 2013, the same thing. Maybe around 2019 or 2018, the same thing. Have they brought anybody to books to say, yes, this is our finding? I'm sorry, my dear brother, you know what Nigerian is? It's so pathetic. It's sad. We do investigation. What's the outcome of? Look at the answer thing. Everybody is waiting to hear the results. Now, all we had, they're giving another two, So I would say 50-50.
Another segment of that, of your industry that's seldom talked about are the people who work at sites. One wonders if there is any form of insurance or any protection of sorts for them, even in the codes, just as you're saying.
Oh, yes. It's clearly stated in the National Building Code. And when we talk about domesticating it, bringing it to be building regulations, for a particular state or a particular area, part of the prerequisite is insurance. But at the same time, I ask myself, is the insurance company helping at all? I'll give you a good example. As an architect or a consultant in the built environment, first and foremost is you must have a professional indemnity insurance. So that when things like this happen, it might not be due to your negligence, but, vicarious liability, maybe one of the staff or, human error. But our insurance company, I've been involved in a lot of projects. Our insurance company wants to take everything from you. Because I'll just give you an example. I'm being paid maybe just 1 million naira as my professional fee. To get that, indemnity insurance, because the cost of the project is 100 million naira. Are you with me? The insurance company will be asking for almost about 37 or 47 million naira premium. And it's so sad because we try to involve them and let's look at how it's best practiced globally. I won't lie to you, sometimes, I get my insurance from abroad, my professional indemnity insurance, and this is spread, along the duration of the construction. And it's, pocket friendly because I know if I'm getting 10 naira monthly as part of my fee, if 2 naira is going to that something, for the professional indemnity insurance, quite good. But here, everybody wants to, be rich overnight.
It's a global village. We can't do things in isolation with the best practices internationally. But to give us some answers, hopefully, as to all of these building committee tribunals that have been set up, what has become of any one of them, should we be optimistic or otherwise? We'll head to Abuja. Mark.
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us in our studios this morning Mr. Kunle Awobodu, who is the immediate past president, Nigerian Institute of Building as the NIOB. He's also the immediate past president, Building Collapse Prevention Guild, BCPG. You're welcome to our studios this morning.
Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
I do not know how you, as Chamberlain was saying, internalized this news when it broke, this very big tragedy, which we now understand has taken the lives of about 20 people already. Seeing such a building of that magnitude just go down like a pack of dominoes must have, I don't know what it must have done to you, especially when you have sat on a committee that's supposed to prevent the collapse of buildings, at least in Nigeria. What were your thoughts on it?
I was astonished. That problem of frequent building collapse has been my fault for many years to prevent it. I've been leading those who believe in appropriate construction of buildings. So when it happened, I felt very sad that as if all our efforts were not yielding result. That day was November 1st.
Yes, the 1st of November.
1st of November. I went down into self-introspection. Say, why should this be happening in Ikoyi of all places? But coincidentally, a building collapsed in Ikoyi, Glover Court, exactly on November 1st, 2019. The same November 1st, it's rare to hear any news about building collapse in Ikoyi. I felt sad. On this note, I profoundly commiserate with the families of the deceased. Building is my profession. That actually serves as a point of fulfillment for every human being that aspires to own a shelter. But when such a profession is creating or sending people early to graves, it is not encouraging.
It is.
When this news came, or let me say yesterday, I received a message from my colleagues in Australia who offer to come and assist us in Nigeria
In the
to
rest?
end building collapse.
Okay.
I felt embarrassed and insulted
Why?
because we have competent professionals in this country.
So what is that? Is a problem?
Those who call me, who send messages from Australia, were builders in Australia. Let's say Australia Institute of Building.
So the question is,
So the question now,
what exactly is the gap? If you say that we have
Yes.
professionals and they, I mean, because I'm sure we're yet to investigate to find out those who were responsible for erecting this building, or even to know what happened, to know whether it was their fault or whether it wasn't their fault. There have been a number of stories as to what was approved and what was eventually erected, and that disparity as well. The question is, if we do have professionals, are there professionals who stick with the ethics of the profession?
yeah. What my colleague, architect Majakobi Dumi just mentioned now, was in the design area. There are two major areas in this construction: design part and construction part. The law has favored the design aspect, where you must have qualified architect to design for you and qualified structural engineer to handle the engineering design. You might have other engineers too, like electrical or mechanical engineers. So they vet those those drawings at that department, Ministry of Physical Planning. But after potential developers have been given their approved building plans, nobody bothers really to monitor who will handle the building construction. I've been involved in many building investigations in this country. And I've identified all along this peculiar problem, which is site. Most of the failures occur from errors committed on site. Therefore, there is need to pay particular attention to site activities. And we have a law. The federal government has taken care of that. Recognized that since 1989 by this Builders Act that established Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria to make sure that we have competent hands to manage building production on site. So, this came into greater awareness after the collapse of 5-story building at number 63, Massey Street, Lagos Island. So the regulation, the Lagos state government now came out with LAFCA regulations. And this section 4, subsections 2, highlighted the importance that on every building site, all over Lagos State, there must be a registered builder. Then, if you go to section 4 and subsection 3, it stated the punishment when failure occurs on site. Those who will be held responsible.
What is the punishment? Can you let us know what it is?
When it is for negligence, you'll be held liable. So there are two things I want you to identify there. When you say a registered builder should be on site. It is to hold somebody accountable. A job given to so many people tends to lead to gambling. But when you have identified the actual professional that will be held responsible, then such a professional will wake up. The problem we are having in our industry is this: quackery. Quackery. That's the major cause of building collapse in Nigeria all along. Because people are looking at the profit, pecuniary gains on site, rather than the risks. And we are able to confirm this. So, now, by the time you introduce punishment for failure on site, many of those people who are looking for quick money through site activities will disappear. So simple. Myself and actor Maja Kudumi, we have been working together on this for long. When the Minister of Works and Housing was governor in Lagos State, he set up a technical committee led by General Riz, now retired as an architect. The present governor, Sanwo-Olu, Jide Sanwo-Olu, was the vice chairman of that committee. Myself and architect Majeko Dumi were members. We were tasked with all other leaders of 7 professional bodies. We were tasked to try to resolve this frequent collapse of building in Lagos.
So
coming, we now came out with this physical planning law and urban development in 2010.
yeah, 2 things I've heard you say. You've talked about the fact that builders, there's quackery in the industry, and as such, that could be possible. That could also be holding the industry to ransom. The second I've heard you also mention is monitoring. Who monitors what happens at the site? And we've seen that there are gaps there. I'd like you to expatiate on these 2 major, especially in the light of the fact that we've seen the suspension of the
GM Labka.
Yes, GM Labka by the Lagos State government. There'll be questions because we understand that they have been speaking. We understand that the site was closed for about 4 months before now, and it was recently opened. There'll be questions as to why was it closed, what led to the reopening of that particular site. I know that these are all questions for investigation, but perhaps from your own background, you might be able to help us into, what exactly happens with monitoring and, especially of sites like that. We'll do this when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
They come back.
While families of the victims mourn the loss of their loved ones, many questions remain unanswered. Questions particularly relating to the structure. Who approved the construction? Who supervised the work? Details of the letter now gone viral on social media, dated 20th of February 2020, addressed to one Mr. Femi Oshibono, and written by Mr. Muritala Olawale of Prowess Engineering Services, suggests that trouble may have been brewing before now. The letter notifies the client of its decision to withdraw its structural consultancy services from the project. The letter reads, quote, "We can guarantee the integrity of the first 2 buildings and also works done up to the 4th floor of the 3rd building supervised by us, provided specifications have been met in terms of the required concrete strength. This we do not have control over, as we do not have the concrete cube test results for each stage of the building till date." I call the numbers listed in the letter repeatedly.
The number you dialed is switched off.
Channels Television also tried to locate the address of Prowess Engineering Services seen in the letter. Here's what we found. We also visited the office of the Lagos State Building Control Agency with the same objective, but we were told the general manager and communications officer had moved to the site of the collapsed Jared terraces since the incident occurred. Many more questions come up even now. Who leaked the letter by Prowess Engineering Services notifying Fourscore Limited of its decision to pull out of the Jared Terraces project? How come the address entered for Prowess Engineering Services is not found in GRA as indicated in the letter? Or if it is where it is said to be at number 30A, Ladoke Akintola Street, GRA, why is it yet another construction site? And as relief efforts continue, answers to these questions are sought. It is hoped that the steps taken by the government will go a long way to calm frayed nerves. Bukola Samuel Wemimo, Channels Television News.
What matters enough in this world?
Well, yes, we still have our guests in the studio, Mr. Kunle Awobodo. That's our correspondent, Bukola Samuel Wemimo, trying to do an investigation there, or carrying out an investigation on a letter which has been going round, showing that I think the structural engineers withdrew from the site sometime in February 2020. But we have not been able to confirm that from the report which she was able to put together there. But coming back to the issues, two of them which we raised before we went on break, and that is something you can also take into consideration because all manner of things have come to the fore since the collapse of this particular building. Monitoring is a big issue. We've seen several building collapse. People have talked about how people get approval for certain number of floors, especially the multi-story, and then we see that what is approved for them is not what they're building. How does monitoring work in your own experience in Lagos State?
Thank you very much. I earlier mentioned the physical planning and urban development law that our committee work on or reform and produce in Lagos State. In anticipation of the importance of check and balances in the monitoring process and plan approval end, we decided to separate the Ministry of Physical Planning into three. Planning, we created planning agency or planning permit agency, and then Lagos State Building Control Agency. The third one was urban, I think, regeneration or renewal.
The building control is the LAPSCA. Right?
Is the LAPSCA. You see, we fought a battle to be able to separate the two. That let us consider Nigerians or investors or tenants that have been suffering from this effect of building collapse. Planning permit, after approval, you have given out approval, having discovered that what people build on site were at conflict with the approved building plans and suspected connivance of certain elements in the planning permit, in the approval sector, planning approval, building plan approval sector. We now say, let us create another agency that will be going around on monitoring, that were not involved in the approval, to go and check on site if approval, if what they are constructing on site conforms with the approved building plans. And that was the assignment.
So how come they're failing? Because
Yes.
we're still saying building collapse, even
Yes.
after the establishment of this monitoring board.
You know, after this law came into operation, some of us now discover some limitations. That Lagos, the development in Lagos has been so rapid, and Lagos is quite large in terms of construction, building construction development.
Do they
so
lack,
what
do,
we
do
now
they lack
did,
capacity to do it all by themselves?
Capacity, you have mentioned the issue. And I made a lot of noise about that. Today, what we are having today, Ikoyi has one district supervisor, supervising officer, in conjunction with VI, Victoria Island. Then Ikoyi has just 6 monitoring officers, while VI has 6 monitoring officers. Then look at Lekki Peninsula, about 755 square kilometer area, having, although 2 units. We have Etiosa East, Etiosa West, 1 supervisor, but 6 monitoring officer each. How can you get result? It was impossible.
Is that the status as of today?
That I'm telling you, that is, as of today, that is what is in practice. So, when they notice contravention, some of the problems that are happening that might have also led to that collapse of building, they will first of all serve contravention notice. Then, that same day by law, you must serve stop work order. So that is when you will mark, or no, stop work order. Then in the next 48 hours, you will come back. If the contravention persists, you will now mark and say seal up. You seal the site. But to seal, you might just mark, but you can't see. How can one person, 6 of them, one person, go and face such danger? So what now happens is this. You will go and report at enforcement. You will now open a file about that side. Then report at to your head, who will now contact the enforcement unit. Something that's supposed to take place almost immediately could take 1 week or more than 1 week.
So from what we hear now, this particular site was sealed off for 4 months. But I don't know if you've been able to confirm that is true. And that it just came back. What do you think was responsible for that? We're running out of time.
Yes, let me quickly hand up. That side, according to information, this is inside information, that they see that side. The monitoring officers were so scared, according to information from within, that some of the guys in that compound were firing guns, and they asked them to sit down. The monitoring officers that went there, they threatened them. So I also learned later that the commissioner went there with the support of police to arrest those people in that.
So there's sometimes intimidation from developers.
Yes, they were arrested. But how they were released is a problem. Let me just chip in this. Ikoyi, all monitoring officers are afraid to work in Ikoyi because you don't know who is the owner of that property or that site. They were highly influential. So, some of the monitoring officers are handicapped. while we were investigating the collapse of this building on Massey Street, we interviewed some of these staff. How many of them were monitoring Lagos Island, where you have any area boys to go and stop work? About 2 or 3. So they were just going there maybe to collect some gift. You know, there's also corruption in the system. So to avoid this kind of a problem, we have been involved in this thing for many years. The issue of a synagogue and Lekki Gardens. As the president of Building Collapse Prevention Grid, we constituted a committee. We investigated that of scientific investigation, that of synagogue, and also went ahead, supported by Nigerian police, because of our efforts to investigate that of Lekki Gardens. Lekki Gardens collapsed on March 8th. So, at the end of the day, the outcome of our investigation, we went to court. BCPG investigation reports were being used to prosecute those who are involved. Just like Professor Wole Soyinka lamented recently. What came out of that? Adjournment. Up to today, no result. One of the major persons that took part in the construction of, or the MD of that company, that took part in the construction of that of synagogue, who happened to be a petroleum engineer, Quackery, died recently. So look at how that case will suffer a setback. That of Lekki Gardens, I don't know if he has been withdrawn from court. We are no longer hearing anything. And our members went there as witnesses, cross-examined. So this Massey Street investigation, which I was a member of the committee, up to today, where is the BBC have been asking?
Big questions, Mr. Kunle Awobodu. And I want to believe that there are questions that perhaps government itself will be able to provide some answers to, because this one, 20 lives already, I mean, and many more. We do not know how many more will be brought out alive. Our prayers are that, you know, there will be miracles from this particular site, because it will be nothing short of a miracle if people are pulled out alive from the kind of rubble that we see. I'm sorry, we're totally out of time. We wish we could continue with this segment, but we have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Mr. Kunle Awobodu is immediate past president, Nigerian Institute of Building as the NIOB, and also the immediate past president, Building Collapse Prevention Guild. Thank you so much for coming to our studios in Abuja this morning. It's over now to you, gentlemen in Lagos.
Well, yeah, it does appear as though government have to look themselves in the mirror if they want to address some of these challenges. But Mr. Michael, listen to what he said about how this building was reopened in the first place. Is that what professionals face in that sector?
Oh, yes. Now, there are a lot of factors. Number one, you seal up a site. Definitely there are a process that you need to do before the site can be open. We can tell now whether the process went through. Also, you have the factor of the so-called or influential, where they have armed men at their site. You, the monitoring agency, you cannot enter the site because you see an armed man. What's the government doing about this monitoring agency? Are you giving them, even giving them an armed man too? There are levels, you could see either a task force and maybe one hop. There's a difference between mobile police and ordinary police. Yeah. That's one. Then there's also the factor from the area boys. There is no construction site in Lagos that you don't have all these miscreants coming to disturb. That's also, the other factor is, like Kunle Awobodu said, we've been on this for more than a decade. Now, does the government have the capacity? No. In a best practice well, globally, we have what we call accredited checkers, accredited certifier, third-party certifier. And these are other, for instance, let me take you as you're the architect that designed this table. He works with the government, but you have thousands to look at. I can be your accredited checker, where not only just looking at the design or looking at the drawing, but to monitor. But I must have a professional indemnity insurance that will qualify me that, yes, this project is worth 1 billion naira. And the risk is to me that I must give the right report on that. That's another factor. Another factor is to do with the material testing laboratories. Part of the process, they're supposed to be continuous material testing, in terms of the cube test for the concrete, in terms of the test for the iron rod, in terms of other materials to be tested continuously. Because when you do the cube test, you do the first 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, and lastly 28 days to say, okay, the concrete you are putting on this first floor, does it meet the requirement? Is it well cured? Even when you're going all that 21 floors, you still have to do for every floor. But we only have one material testing laboratory in Lagos, which is not adequate. Now the government needs to outsource, need to give, certified material testing laboratory. University of Lagos has one, built and I think sponsored by Julius Berger. Yaba College of Technology has one. But if you take your materials to this place, for me, I get the best results from the Unilag material testing laboratory because I'm more comfortable, certified. Yes, there's no, how will I put it, compromise in it. But an officer in the state laboratory that hasn't got his salary maybe for some months or whatever, or I want a quick result, it's just a matter of just a little token.
But it's the same like the material testing laboratory that said, that the GM said in February this year, that they are not going to tolerate collapsed buildings anymore at an event.
Thank you. And if a structural stability test has been done on this particular building, and if that is the reason why it is sealed, sorry. There's a lot to be answered.
Well, just on the side, when you mentioned area boys, the miscreants you call them the other time, I was wondering if there was any way those elements are captured in the laws. But I'm just wondering, now that this is where we are, this is our situation right now, and it is not something limited to Lagos. It's a national issue. But we're talking about Lagos now. And we have learned quite a few lessons. What must we do to ensure that we do not find ourselves here again? The laws are there, and a number of things are still happening. I'm just wondering, what in your opinion will be not just a quick fix, but as permanent a solution as possible to end this once and for all?
Yes. Like the last speaker and what we've been talking about is capacity building. Enough is enough of this. Let's get everyone involved. The government cannot do it alone. So why not outsource? Don't look at the money-making side of it. Look at the people's life you're putting in danger. The Lagos State chapter of the Nigerian Institute of Architects has taken so many things upon themselves where it's not just the awareness about the National Building Code, but also we're collaborating with the state government to have all registered architects in Lagos State in their, in their, what's it called, in their list. So the moment a drawing is submitted or the moment you are monitoring, the project, you know who to quickly call upon. The National Building Code, like I said, is only for 4 major parts. Pre-design, design, construction, and post-construction is clearly stated. And everyone is involved at this stage. And all it involves is capacity building. Where the government lacks, why not? The professional bodies, collaborating and, that's the way it's done abroad.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, what we all need to know, the developers, everyone in that sector, is that, look, all of these structures and measures that are put in place is to protect everybody, including yourselves, those developers, because look at what has happened now. They can't get any of those lives that have been lost back. So I guess it needs no telling that we all need to do what is right to get these things going on. Maybe we'll start with the building code. Since the speaker has spoken up about commiserating with families, maybe they should take it from there. Get the building code up and running. I want to thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
Mr. David Machikudume is the chairman in Nigerian Institute of Architects, Lagos chapter. We will be back in a moment. Don't go away.